Mooc. Wondering what in the world a Mooc is? Or maybe you are vaguely familiar with the term, but are not sure how it differs from any other online course? In this video, we will go over what Moocs are, how they came to be, what questions and issues face the Mooc approach today, and where this very new method of learning may be headed next. So as you can see here, the acronym Mooc stands for Massive Open Online Course. Clear as mud? Probably not. So let's take a closer look at what each of these words or characteristics represent. Let's start at the end here. So a Mooc is a course that is online. So far, pretty straightforward. However, unlike most of the online courses we are used to, Moocs are open. Here, open means that the course is free or pretty darn close to free, and open also means that anyone can enroll in and take the course. In other words, you don't need to be accepted into a college or university to take the course. You can be anywhere in the world so long as you have access to the internet, and there's no tuition or fee. So, as you can imagine, online courses that are free and open to anyone in the world have a tendency to become massive. By massive, we mean hundreds or even thousands of students enroll in and participate in the course. In fact, one of the first Moocs enrolled 160,000 students in 209 countries. Now, the typical Mooc isn't that massive, but it is not unusual for a Mooc to have hundreds or even 1,000 enrollees. Moocs are relatively new, so everyone is still trying to get a feel for how they should operate and what they will ultimately become. Will they ultimately replace a traditional higher ed education? How will they be sustained if students aren't paying to take them? What are the best teaching methods for a Mooc with so many students? Let's take a look at how Moocs got started. The first Mooc was offered in 2008, so not that long ago, at the University of Manitoba by George Siemens and Stephen Downes. Their course was Connectivism and Connective Knowledge, and to really help illustrate the concept of connective knowledge, they decided to extend enrollment in the course beyond their University of Manitoba students, who were paying for and earning course credit for taking the course, to also include anyone who wanted to sign up. Their course ended up including an additional 2,200 other individuals worldwide who simply wanted to participate in the course. While this course is technically considered the first Mooc, it wasn't until about 3 years later that the concept of a Mooc, extending beyond a demonstration of a course concept to being an actual class format, really took hold. In 2011, Sebastian Thrun and Peter Norvig, Stanford professors, were inspired by a TED Talk by Salman Khan, in which he talked about Khan Academy and this idea of using the internet to share lessons freely and to connect students from around the world. As an experiment, Thrun and Norvig decided to offer their next artificial intelligence course online and to open it up to anyone who wanted to join. They were shocked, to say the least, when 160,000 students from around the world enrolled. Thrun and Norvig realized they were onto something big, so not long after this initial experiment with their course, they quit their jobs at Stanford to launch a new company called Udacity, a platform for offering more of these free online courses. Not long after Udacity, two other Stanford professors launched another Mooc platform called Coursera. Other Mooc platforms quickly followed. Many of these companies began partnering with universities that wanted to jump in on the bandwagon. As the world of Moocs began to grow, there began a lot of hubbub over what this new approach to education meant for higher education. If anyone anywhere could now have access to higher education courses taught by university professors for free, would the traditional brick and mortar, very expensive universities be able to survive? Well, it's been a handful of years now, and the traditional universities don't seem to be going anywhere, at least yet. And there have been plenty of questions regarding the feasibility and sustainability of the Moocs as well. For example, how can this model sustain itself without student fees? Where can these platforms draw a source of revenue? Will institutions continue to pay their faculty to teach Moocs that don't draw in tuition dollars? And how effective are Moocs for learning anyway? Well, to address the revenue issue, some Mooc providers have decided that they will continue to offer their courses for free, but if students want to receive any sort of course credit or a certificate of completion, they need to pay a fee to take a test on what they have learned. Coursera began offering a matchmaking service for employers to line them up with students who performed well in certain courses, and they would then collect a fee from the employer. Others have begun to offer licenses to institutions to use content from their Moocs. And some generate revenue by selling their expertise to institutions wanting to set up their own Moocs. Needless to say, these companies are still working on creative ways to sustain themselves. And what about all of those teachers? Many universities have been willing to pay their faculty to teach a Mooc because, especially at the start of the Mooc era, there seemed to be so much potential in a method that draws in millions of students from around the world. But exactly how that potential will substantiate itself is still unclear today. Most Mooc teachers, while being supported by their universities, are so passionate about teaching that they want to be teaching their Moocs. So for now, it may really be the passion of the teachers that keep their Moocs going. Many universities may also find incentive in the idea of promoting themselves and the potential of Moocs to extend that reach far and wide. And finally, let's talk about how well Moocs actually do their job at helping people learn something new. After all, if a class of hundreds or thousands of students only has one teacher, or even a couple of teachers, how on earth does that work? Well, I think it'll help for us to return to the word Mooc. You may occasionally see a Mooc referred to as a C Mooc or an X Mooc. A C Mooc is basically how Moocs started. The C stands for connectivist. If you recall, the purpose of the first Mooc was to illustrate the concept of connectivism and collective knowledge, the power of people coming together and sharing ideas and what they know, and how new knowledge can actually be generated out of this coming together of ideas and discourse. C Moocs tend to emphasize learning from each other, that the most valuable learning content is that which is developed through discussion. The idea really is that everyone in the course is both a teacher and a learner, and learners have more control over how they want to participate. As you can imagine, C Moocs heavily rely on discussion boards, blogs, wiki pages, and other means that allow participants to interact with one another. XMOOCs, on the other hand, are more like what you see in the typical higher ed course. The X stands for extended, or the extension of the curriculum. These courses will have a clearly identified teacher, and the course content will consist of video lessons, readings, and assignments and assessment that is set up with auto-generated feedback, such as multiple choice quizzes. Most Mooc providers offer this type of course. And many Moocs are a bit of both types, having a clear structure set up by an instructor, along with tailored content and lessons, while also maintaining discussion boards where participants are encouraged to discuss the course content and to come up with new ideas. With time, I'm sure new types of Moocs will continue to evolve to address the current and new types of needs of students who participate in Moocs. Which is an interesting question in of itself. What are the needs of students who participate in Moocs? Interestingly, despite the initial idea of disrupting traditional, expensive, inaccessible higher ed, Moocs seem to be serving a different purpose and a different population altogether. Moocs tend to have a very low completion rate. I recently saw a statistic of about 15%, but I imagine in most cases it's even lower than that. This may seem shocking, but considering the fact that Mooc students really have little investment in completing a Mooc. They didn't pay for it. Their performance is not going to go on a transcript, and they are very likely busy with other things. It's not all that surprising after all. Also consider the fact that most Mooc participants are not college undergraduates or even of the age of young adults who are typically seeking a higher education. Most Mooc participants already have a college degree, are middle-aged, and simply enjoy learning. Many are seeking out further training to help them in their careers. Which brings us to our last point that participants in Moocs tend to be highly motivated learners. They enjoy learning and are not necessarily driven by grades. This may explain why few actually fully complete a Mooc. In fact, many proponents of Moocs have argued that the purpose they serve isn't necessarily to get a student from start to finish. Mooc participants often simply want to peek around a course, participate in those components that they feel they will benefit most from, and may often come and go as needed, sometimes revisiting a course during a later offering. With that said, most course offerings are not what you would see in a typical college course catalog. There is such a variety of courses out there that you can find one to touch up on your math skills or to further your gardening skills.